Hey, this is Joe Stump, and this is Guitar Department Coffee Talk.
This is Kim Perlak, chair of the Guitar Department, with Sheryl Bailey
How you doing?
and Ian Steed.
Hey,
Joe, thanks for hanging with us this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great to be a part of Coffee Talk.
So, in your honor, we've all got our shades, and we've got our Guitar Department coffee mugs.
Yes,
Buddy.
yes.
Joe, what are you drinking in there this morning?
I'm drinking. I drink that Cafe Du Monde stuff from New Orleans almost exclusively. Get it by the case. And then in my coffee, I used to take like fat-free half and half and sugar. Now I swore off sugar, so I got 2 Splendor in there, some fat-free half and half, and then I'm using that super creamer stuff. If you've ever seen that at the store, there's like a French vanilla one and a hazelnut flavored one, and it's like flavored with monk fruit, and it's like got some protein in it because I don't eat very much during the day. So, and it's keto friendly and all that nonsense. So, you know.
Wow, I'm impressed with that.
You wouldn't think I'm so health conscious, but I swore off sugar like back in like April. And I don't even eat any sweets. That was that was the extent of my sugar content.
Wow, good for you, Joe. That's the way to go. Sugar-free and Cafe Du Monde. I'm impressed.
Oh
That's
yeah,
good stuff.
the Cafe Du Monde K cups are like rocket fuel.
Yeah, that's right, because you always had a coffee station in 5U there on the fifth
Oh,
floor.
yeah, oh yeah. I have like a deluxe coffee station.
Wow, good to know. Note taken.
Yeah, don't worry, Sheryl. If you teach over there, you're hooked up. Definitely hooked up if you're near 5U. So, Joe, what we've been doing is having everybody talk a little bit about what your first day at Berklee was like.
Well, I could talk about like my early Berklee experiences.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, growing up, I played playing hard rock, at a Stratton and Marshall when I was in high school, and I was playing like I grew up in New York, and the drinking age was 18, so I was in my first bar at 15, playing in my first bar at like 15 and a half, and playing hard rock and stuff. And then I went to Berklee, and then everybody's talking in this. In the jazz lingo with the swinging and the cats and the whole thing. And I was like, I don't understand anything anybody's saying. You know what I mean? I'm on like Planet Jazz. I don't know what's going on here. I better get with the program. And back then it was obviously the faculty and just the program in general wasn't nearly as diverse. So it was either, get with this or you go home, and I had discovered I was a big fan of Al Di Meola and his Elegant Gypsy and Casino records right before I went in my last year of high school. So I was into like some on the rock side of fusion stuff, and then I got into more classical stuff and jazz and things of that nature when I got there.
Cool.
Did you find
Yeah,
other students that were into what you were into? I mean, you sort of found a group of people there, or did you feel that you were sort of leading the pack on stylistically in what you were doing?
No, well, I kind of fell into playing jazz and playing fusion, and I mean, during that time, it was like I believe 1979. It was a great time to be there because there's so many players that went on to do so many great things that were there at the time. And it was really more of a player's school since the MP&E department was in its infancy. And so there was an attitude around everybody that if you weren't living it, eating, breathing it, and sleeping it, then you should take the next bus or the next train or whatever and just go home. Because here we're all business here. We're serious about this. So I love that intensity about it. And I did play a lot of jazz and fusion stuff when I was a student, but then maybe midway through the time I was there, I went back to my metal and rock roots. And no offense to I mean jazz and fusion is great, but for me personally that was the smartest thing I ever did.
Yeah, I had a question about that because I think a lot of students who come, like some of them come and they think, okay, the guitar department, especially now, has all these styles and I can branch out as much as I want. And they really embrace that. And then there are people who feel like, well, because I'm so committed to this style, I'm reluctant to do that. But when you came, you had that choice. You had to really study jazz and fusion or really not be there for a while. So, what would you say like to them about how studying jazz and fusion informed what you do that became your real signature style?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't know how much that helped me. I played a lot of classical stuff, and I never graduated, but I was a performance major. And at the time you were a performance major, you had to play a lot of solo stuff. So I played a lot of classical solo stuff, but not traditional, because I'm not. You take the pick out of my hand, and I'm a loser. So I was doing it all like picking fingers, playing some Fernando Soares stuff, and of course a bunch of Bach and some Paganini and some single note stuff and all that. So that portion of it really helped me. And the fact that that discipline that it takes when you're doing anything, whether it's like, I remember when I was a student, I played Joe Pass's entire arrangement of Night and Day off of one of the Virtuoso records. It was like 26 pages long. And I had the whole thing memorized and pretty blazing. So there was a certain discipline to that translated with what I do now.
Well, it's interesting, Joe, about just the classical thing, thinking about Bach. I think that music, the lines in those music relate to what you do in metal, but also as a jazz player. I always often think if reincarnation was true, maybe Charlie Parker was the reincarnation. The concept behind the lines, I just find for just about any genre of music, particularly guitar playing that you want to get into, everybody studies those, right? And there's so much to glean from those lines.
Oh yeah, all roads lead back to JS, and you certainly can't go wrong with him. Or any of his sons are pretty badass too, but JS is the man.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear that too as a classical musician, because I think for a lot of students coming in, that you think, there's these divisions between styles, and in some people's minds, classical music is really separate. But I think the more deeply you go, everyone who's a great musician has gone back to study that music because of the way the lines work, because of the way the harmony moves, and also having perpetual motion and having phrasing. When I hear metal guitar players, when I hear you play, I think of that right away. I think of the way that phrases really dovetail, and you can have something that feels like it never stops, but also feels like it breathes and has different ideas.
I mean, just like there's so many things you could take from it, also harmonically and whether it's arpeggio patterns, scalular patterns, different things you can isolate, different ideas, the way you're looking at some of the inventions or the fugues and see the way the parts are put together and all that. It's just like, it's a continuous, treasure trove of all kinds of stuff.
So Joe, I think you are probably one of the most known faculty members. I think that's fair to say. Like, students, they know exactly who you are. You walk down the hallway and people who've never come to Berklee, they're like, oh, that's Joe Stump, and you've not just created a distinctive sound on the instrument, but the whole way that you are as an artist is really distinctive. How did you develop that?
Well, as far as the look and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I always liked to dress up and I remember when I was a little kid and I was like 10. I used to love that show. I used to love Tom Jones. Like This Is the Tom Jones Show, and he would grab the mic with all his rings, and then back in the '70s when I was little, I was like 9 or 10. They had those silk neckerchiefs you used to wear with the ring and stuff, like with the big lapels and stuff. And I had one of those when I was like 9 or 10. I thought it was the coolest thing, So I've always been into accessorizing and stuff like that. So I was kind of a wackadoo even as a kid. And then and then as far as the way I play, it's steeped in like all of the great European masters of hard rock and metal that started with Ritchie Blackmore and Uli John Roth and Michael Schenker, and then Yngwie came along and he was the link between those players and what would become shred. So I loved all those players and Al Di Meola. And then I was reading about Yngwie in a guitar player magazine. He was in the Spotlight column, which featured, unknown talent. And I was like, this guy sounds like he'd be right up my alley. He loves all the same people I do. And then I started listening to him, and I recognized a lot. Oh, there's an Al Di Meola picking pattern. Oh, that's an Uli John Rothlet. And then I started to took all the things from playing classical music and listening to the European masters, and then of course obsessively learning Yngwie stuff as well. So that's kind of how I developed. And I really haven't strayed off that path. It's like what, and it's what I love. I love to listen to that kind of music. I love to play it, and I'm just immersed in it now. It's a part of me, and it's hardwired into me. So and it's not like, oh, don't you want to play in Lydian dominant? It's awesome, but it's not for me.
Right.
I'm good with the scales I like.
So I think sometimes the students come to us and they say like, okay, I'm getting towards the end of my Berklee time and I don't know if I've developed my voice or who I am. And could you give them a sense of like your timeline? Like you had a sense of who you were and now you feel like it's embedded in you. What was the evolution of that like in a timeline? Did it take a while?
Well, as soon as I kind of decided I was just going to go full on just into going back to hard rock, it started there in my early 20s, and then I mean, if I was to play you the very first record I made in 1989, I was in this band Trash Broadway, and it was funny because the way we got our record deal is we set the singer put together like a promo pack with a cassette, and then you would send it out to all the labels. At the time there was a ton of independent metal labels, and then we got a call from this label, Torrid Records from New York, and they saw, and we got a record deal, and we went to New York City and shot the record cover and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, if I was to play you a track from that, you could still hear elements of my playing, but of course it's not nearly as developed. If I played you like recordings from the different periods of my career, it's always moving forward. But I mean, it kind of started in my early 20s, and then I started to really hone it. And like anything, you just constantly striving to get better and better. So I would say to students that a lot of times when you're younger, and I remember being young, especially being from New York, it would be like, all right, if I'm not playing Madison Square Garden by the time I'm 25, I guess I'm washed up. I guess it's all over. And sadly, I have never played Madison Square Garden, but I have played like some big sport. I played the Olympia Hall in Munich, and not because everybody was there to see me. I was in the opening band on a bigger tour, and that's where Deep Purple played and Rainbow played, very famous. Zeppelin played, very famous concert hall. I played like sport halls in Europe and big metal festivals and stuff. So I mean, I would tell younger players not to be as don't worry, it takes time. Yeah, it takes time, but it's great to have direction. One thing I remember distinctly is I used to live next door to Steve Vai when we were both like 17. And one thing great about Steve was that Steve was laser focused on what he did even back then. That element of like, post Van Halen meets Alan Holdsworth meets Frank Zappa, and all of his thing was he was developing that from then on, and so I always thought that was also a great thing, having direction at a young age and knowing what your thing is and knowing this is going to be what I'm going to do is great. So if you can it's great to expand and all that kind of stuff, but if you can find that and immerse yourself in it, it's awesome.
That's great. Ian, what are you thinking about as we're having this conversation? What's on your mind?
Well, okay. Can I just go right back to one little fact that your band was called Trash Broadway?
Yes.
That is the killingest name I've ever heard.
Yes,
Do you still have the record?
You know what's funny is the record, the Trash Broadway record was just re-released. I want to say last year by a label called Demon Doll that puts out all these '80s metal records. So if you go on, it's funny because they did like a. But there was a track off the record, and there's a bunch of video footage when we were making the record. So if you got the name of the tracks, if you look up Trash Broadway Rough and Tumble, you'll see it'll be like a cut together video. So you'll see pictures of me in the studio, like when I was like 28 or something like that. And I forget who came up with the name. It might have been me because or the drummer or something. I can't remember. And the logo was very cool because the Trash was kind of edgy looking, and the Broadway was kind of classy looking. And we actually shot the record cover. And this is back in the day where like we went to New York City. And in parts of New York City, the subway tunnels are really, really long, and so originally we shot it in the summertime. So we're all in our rock suits, and it's all hot. It's like 90 degrees, and we're riding the subway in our rock suits to get to the location with the photographer, and of course there's makeup girls. It's like and so we rode there, and then we got down there, and for some reason we had to shoot the cover again. So we went back in the wintertime, and then there were all these guys down on the subway doing crack and everything, and the cops had to clear them out, for us to shoot the record cover and all that. So it was a true New York experience.
Wild. Okay, so one thing, can I go back to like some of the other things you were talking about like, these things taking time and like, your transformation as a student, from that. I guess one thing, like if you go back, and I'm asking everybody this, but if there's something that like you've noticed that a lot of students, and maybe it was in your own experience, but like some bit of wisdom that you got since then, that's like, if I was a student again, like what would I have asked then? Or like, what is the thing that, students might come to you and you think like, you're not thinking about it right. Like, what's the one thing that they should be asking that they might not think to?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that, like right off the bat. I mean, I just try to preach to them whatever you like, whatever you're into, and of course, like most of the players that study with me are metal players, but but metal has so many different subgenres now. I mean, it's great to branch out and all that kind of stuff, but it's great to don't let anybody take you off the path. Like stay true to the music that you love. Stay true to what brought you there. Like when students talk to me about like playing a performance piece for the proficiency, I say, well, the most important thing is, like I say, say we're not at Berklee. Say there's no test. I mean, I'd be telling you what's a great thing to do. Expand your vocabulary by playing things by your heroes and the people and the masters of the genre you love. And it should be the kind of thing where you hear that, and I love that. I got to play that. I'm not stopping until I play that. It's got to be, that's the way you got to feel about your proficiency piece. Not like, oh well, I think I'm going to do this. You know what I mean? Because I did it when I was 14 and it's easy. I got too much homework. So I would say stay on the path.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you're saying. You have really distinctive musical values. I mean, they're undeniable. And when you have students who are coming to you, how do you help them develop their own musical values in the presence of you and in the presence of the work of some of these masters without just like kind of falling into this copying, but for the sake of copying? Like obviously we're transcribing, we're learning from people. But do you feel as though sometimes students come to you and then they try to copy you? And when that happens, how do you kind of push them to learn from you and then find their own way?
Well, everybody finds their own way eventually. I mean, did I reinvent the wheel? By no means. Do sometimes I sound too much like the players I love? Yeah, of course. But that could be guilty of many players. I wear my influences like a badge of honor. I'm proud of them. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's where I got that from. What's it to you? But I mean, one problem. Just speaking in general, one problem with this generation of players, and it's not their fault, is there's so much information available to them, and everything is so easy and accessible that that old school idea of when you learn something, then taking it apart and taking one idea and stretching it and all that kind of stuff, and stretching it stretching it like in ways where you can develop whether it's technical exercises using a particular idea or motif or lick, or ways you can learn the instrument or different variations of it rhythmically or whatever. That whole old school thing of taking one lick and turning it into 10 of your own is kind of lost on them to a certain extent, where they're kind of programmed to must learn it, must play it, must learn it, must play it clean. I got to get it down. I got to play it as fast as the dude. I'm going to play it better than the dude. You know what I mean? So there's kind of that thing that kind of gets lost a bit.
Yeah. Sheryl, what's on your mind?
Well, I have a discussion that I'd love to have with you, because I have my opinions about it, and I'm sure that you have some thoughts about this. In terms of playing the electric guitar, like myself, I'm an electric guitarist. I'm not an acoustic guitarist. I've tried, and it's very difficult. It's a different animal. So, even though, and sometimes people think that I just play jazz guitar, but I don't. I'm actually came from the same cloth that you were cut from as a shredder, and I do that kind of thing. But so like in terms of your technique on the electric guitar, right? It's different than playing an acoustic guitar, and for instance, your technique. There are all these elements that overlap when we talk about tone, technique, speed, and musicality, rhythm, feel, time. There's a place in the middle where they all meet. But in terms of the electric guitar, in terms of producing a sound, so the electric guitar, your instrument is electric guitar. My instrument is electric guitar. So I need to play the electric guitar, not a guitar unplugged. That's not what I play, right? So getting your sound through your amp, but also it's a different animal when you're playing your guitar through processing, through an amp, or however you're dealing with it. So distortion or modulation or any kinds of effects like that. So I would love to know your opinions. You could pick any one of these topics, because I kind of laid out a deck of cards and you can pick. But I'd love to know your thoughts about developing technique and tone as an electric guitarist. Somehow I think that you're going to have lots of thoughts about it, and I'd love to know what they are.
Well, I think a player's practice tone and playing tone should replicate their tone. I mean, say somebody has their standard guitar rig that they're going to be playing with live or whatever. No matter what, you should try to replicate that in any kind of scenario, whether it's a recording scenario or whether it's a practice scenario or whatever. Because shaping because that's the thing. Like an old adage is like, oh, it's easy to play with distortion. No, it is not easy to play with distortion. All the distortion will cover up whatever you're doing wrong. No, that's not true. Is it easier to play through a small practice amp or two Marshall stacks blaring loudly? Is it easier to sit there crouched over and play, or be standing up out there doing damage in front of like a whole bunch of people? So I mean, you always want your practice tone in any situation, whether it's like a small portable practice tone in a hotel room or your home practice tone or whatever. You always want it to be as close to your sound as possible. That way. The things you're hearing in your head and the way you're playing, you're continuing to develop them.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly we're in agreement in that. And I mean, even for myself, if I'm going out to play with some of the artists I play with, where I do play with a lot, pedal boards, and my job is to shred or make sounds, I've definitely set up that rig even though I don't always play with that, I definitely set that out before I go on that tour for that reason, because you know how the instrument, how the pickups and everything react differently with different settings of distortion, or if you have reverb on it or delay. And really, to get the most out of that, you really need to explore all those things that it can do.
Exactly. Well, especially in your case, if it's something where, I mean, I'm playing with the same type of rig in just about every situation, but it's obviously that's much more challenging in a situation like that, where all of a sudden you're doing something that you don't necessarily do all the time. So it's even more crucial to have all that buttoned up and stuff beforehand. And of course, like sometimes in various live situations, when you're playing with distortion, I mean, I'm usually playing loud. I'm either playing loud or really stupidly loud. Like I was in Finland playing my first show with Alcatraz, I forget, in 2019, and I'm like, and they had a Marshall backline for me, and I start playing, and the sound man goes, Joe, if you don't turn down, I don't think we can have a show tonight. So it's like that happens to me in sound check. As soon as I hit a chord, it's like Joe. As soon as I like plug in Joe, you're too loud. I haven't even played anything yet. You want to turn it down?
I'm curious if you are you a person that likes to drive the sound, for instance, your overdrive sound from the amp, pushing the amp, or do you use a lot of effects in front of that?
No, my tone's like pretty straight up, just like, hold on a sec, let me see, I'll see if this works, should work good. I'm not going to play anything fancy, but I'll just kind of demonstrate. Let's see.
I hear that joyous buzz already.
Yeah, Joe, you're too loud.
Exactly. Yeah, so you can hear that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, see that was like my regular practice tone at home. So this I'm playing through I have this old, it's a very antiquated setup, but it sounds killer. It's an old Pod 2.0, but I have this killer like old school Marshall patch programmed into it that sounds great. So this is kind of like a microcosm of my rig, because you could hear like it just sounds like now no drive box, nothing on. And it sounds kind of like a, Hendrixy kind of Richie Blackmore kind of, bluesy crunch tone, when I turn down, I can get a somewhat clean tone. And then you can see there I step on the drive box, and then I get the big metal tone. So usually it's like that. That's like a little microcosm of my live rig, because it's like that, where I have like a bluesy, like I'll set up a Marshall, kind of like a bluesy crunch, and then I'll use a drive box. And then usually what I do live is I'll have use two different drive boxes. Like one will be for more like full-on shred and metal type stuff, and the other one's like a darker, more mid-rangey Richie Blackmore kind of thing I'll use for like more retro hard rock stuff.
That's great. I just want to go ahead. Say one more thing. I hope that you use ear protection, because
no, but I really don't have that much. I've never had a big problem with my ears. And I've used it before in some rehearsals, because if you're in a small rehearsal room, and a lot of time that I'm always stage left, so the drummer's always on my right. So probably my right ear gets more beat up, and it's more from the drummer, the drummer hitting the snare. Especially some of the players I play with, they'll hit the snare and it'll make your teeth chatter.
What I was thinking when you were going through your sound, what I think every guitarist in every style can relate to that at a certain point, like your tone, your sound becomes so important. And that was a huge part of being a classical guitarist. And sometimes when I see students, something that they're a little reluctant to claim, like, this is the way I want to sound, this is what I sound like, this is what my tone is, this is how I'm going to get the sound I want. And I'm wondering, do you feel like your sound, your tone has been consistent throughout your playing, or when do you feel like you kind of found it?
Well, I mean, I have a very distinct sound. I mean, any player's tone and sound always comes from their hands,
Right.
and you know, and who they are. I mean, as I often say, it sounds all deep, but it has to come from within. You know, yeah, like you can have all the same gear as your favorite players and stuff, but you're always going to sound like you. And so I mean, I've been developing my little niche for like, and my the sound of my hands is a microcosm of all the players that I like, kind of all assembled together, and with like the way I play and what I do, it comes out sounding like me. So I've been developing that over years and years, and of course, like anything, it keeps getting better and more refined and more consistent. So you know, I'm very pleased that like my last two solo records, Symphonic Onslaught and The Dark Lord Rises, are like the two best records I've made in my entire career. So it's very gratifying, making records since steadily since 1989 for a solo record 93 that I make that my best works like my most recent work. And of course like the sound and the tone, and you want it to all come together, like the sound in your hands, what's going on with the instrument, controlling the beast under your fingers and all that. It's supposed to be, it all comes together. Like if I'm tracking a solo, the harder, like all the fast technical nonsense, all of a sudden something comes out, it's not quite as tidy as you want, that's easy to fix. You go in there, okay, well, let me fix that one thing. But back in the old days, it wasn't like that. When you recorded on 2-inch tape, you had to trash the whole take. You couldn't go in and fix one thing. Back in the old days, recording on tape. But anyway, the hardest things to replicate are like all of a sudden, you hit a note just right and you get a killer tone and the planets align, and the heavens open up and it's just like, all right, there it is. It's just like sometimes it's like you try to do it again, but you're not going to get close.
Right. Yeah.
Those are the harder things. But a lot of students, like some of my students will come in and their guitars like they're missing a knob, or the other thing is like they'll have a Floyd Rose locking system, but they don't have any of the. It's like that works better when you have the nut screwed down so the guitar stays in tune better. It's like I tell them it's like having a gorgeous car, but it's filthy. The inside's got McDonald's wrappers on the floor and the thing's all dusty and dirty. I mean, you got to take care of your weapon.
One of the things that's come up so much that kind of relates to everything that you're saying is, for a lot of students this time, like we're filming like this because we're in a pandemic. And this is the first time some of them have really had to adapt to like a real big shift that's disrupted what they're doing musically. And I think some of the faculty are just experiencing it differently because it's not the first time you've had to adapt over the years to shifts. And so is there something that comes to mind that you think of in that way, like about adapting, that could help people who are just experiencing this for the first time?
I mean, is it ideal? No, but I mean, everyone's still. You're still learning. You're still playing the guitar. Myself, I'm still instructing. So the love of the instrument and the dedication to the craft continues. So regardless of the situation, nothing should stray you from that. Things will always be. There'll always be something that's hard. There'll always be something that you'll have to adjust to or adapt to. Granted, this is much more life changing than standard things that would happen in the music business or someone's career. but I mean, you always have to keep that in mind. Because as I often say, I'm a glass is half. My glass is always half full. I'll say that to my students. I'll be like asking them something like a scale or a chord, preparing for the test, and I'll be like, well, it wasn't correct, but that was a scale nonetheless. I'm a glass is half. Was that the correct scale? No, but it was a scale, so we're on the right track. As I say to them, I'm a glass is half full guy, but you always wanna you wanna try to be positive because you have to be, especially in this kind of situation, and you really wanna consider yourself lucky to be still involved with the instrument and learning and still doing things that you love.
Sheryl, what comes to mind for you, kind of as we approach the wrap here?
Well, your joy of playing is so evident every time I hear you, and your passion for it. It's infectious, and I love that this is that you're part of our team to share that with our students. That would be and all that you were just saying there about the importance of continuing to study and develop your craft. I think we all agree with that, and so I really thank you for sharing that with us, and again for your great guitar playing. It's very inspiring.
Oh, thanks. I will tell a funny story at the end. When I was a student, I used to study with this guy Al DeFino, that was on the guitar faculty, and Al.
I know Al DeFino.
He's a bit of a legend, yes, right? Yeah.
So Al, so when you would wait outside for your lesson, you could hear Al yelling at the student before you, like really laying into them, and then people would leave their lesson crying, I was of course a very good student, so Al was quite fond of me, and I studied with him for many semesters, and he'd be like Joe, I'd be waiting for my lesson, he'd go, Joe, get in here, play for this guy. Hey, you watch him. But anyway, one thing that Al was like when no one was around, he was practicing. He would take his guitar, you'd sit across from him, and he would stare you down like if you don't mean business with this thing, you shouldn't even be in the same room with me. That's the way it was. And so one thing I got from him was that intensity about being on it all the time. It's like, guess what? You're a little tired today? Too bad. You know what I mean? You don't feel good? Too bad. You got to, for me, especially what I do, I got to bring it every day. Every day, every lesson. It doesn't matter whether I'm giving a lesson, doing a class, playing a concert, whatever. It's got to be consistent and on it. So I got that intensity, but I channel it to my students in a much more friendly and nicer way. Needless to say, I would be the opposite as far as being a hard ass goes. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, that's what I try to translate to my students. That you could talk about scales and chords and arpeggios and technique and everything, but there's no secret. The more you play, the faster you get better. You play in 4 hours, play 6. You play in 6, play 8. I often tell to my students all the time. Who's practicing all the time? Me. I don't know what all of you were doing, but who's getting good? Me. Let's go. Get with the program.
I love it. That's so true. I love that so much. I want Sheryl to unmute so we can hear you laughing, I think.
Well, no, because, I came up in that Berklee environment too, and I think that rubbed off on me as well.
Man, yeah, I was in the conservatories right with you in spirit. Joe, what advice do you have for us as we're kind of managing the department? What have you seen over the course of your time at Berklee that we should know?
I think you guys are doing a tremendous job and an awesome job as far as the department goes, and like anything. I'll often use. Since I'm from New York, I'm a huge Yankee fan. So a team always takes on the personality of their manager, so to speak. And Larry, of course, was a big part of that, and both of you have continued that. So I think that's tremendous. For me, nothing comes to mind. I think everybody's doing. I think out of all the departments at the school, especially, and it's no secret that the guitar department is the life's blood of Berklee. You know
Yeah.
that. You know without us, it's like, please come on. Um, you know, the life's blood of the college. So, you know, and I think we're doing, all things considered, I think we're doing quite well. And I know on my end, all the students are fairly happy and engaged and stuff. Granted, the pandemic's going to get everybody down from time to time, but so far everything's been very positive, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, what are some of the things you think that has made the guitar department successful like that? Like when you say that and you relate it to over the years kind of becoming the life's blood of our school, like what is it? Can you put your finger on it? What stands out to you about the way we are with each other?
Well, there's a great camaraderie between all the faculty, and of course, the faculty is intensely diverse. So whatever style of music you love, and whatever style of guitar you love, there's going to be somebody there that you're really going to be, you know, that you're going to be excited about studying with. So I think that the talent of the knowledge of the knowledge and skill of of the faculty members is unparalleled.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we all have something to say about that in the sense that when you have this many different people who are this good but really respect each other and have fun together, I think it creates a whole environment where a lot of things are possible, right?
Yes, that's what I tell my students all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Is like being concerned with self-improvement is important. Developing is important. Dedication and discipline is important, and you should be concerned with getting good and all that. But you know, you don't want to zap all the fun out of it. That's what I tell them. I got into this line of work because it's fun. You know, guitar's fun. For me, it's still fun. It's like you know, it's having a license to be 15 years old for like the rest of my life. You know, I mean, I show you my workroom, it looks like, you know, I have like, hold on a sec, I'll see if I can spin it around. You know, I have like guitars there. You know, I have like pictures and posters, all framed pictures of all my heroes and everything. Got, you know, the Hendrix wall over here. It's like you died and went to guitar heaven.
It looks a lot like 5U, actually. It really does.
It's like a fancier version of 5U, but with way more pictures and guitars. And of course, like there's guitars DVD, you know, there's guitar DVDs and CDs everywhere, you know.
That's great. Ian, do you have a last thought for us before we finish this pot of coffee?
I guess I'll just like, you know, bounce off that same sort of feeling that like having that diversity of like styles like really allows like students to like really be genuine in the music that they play. And I, you know, you touched on a lot of that today, and it's like the fact that like, you know, you got all these different people playing all these different styles and they're like all doing it so well. You know, actually, Kim, I had ILRE 375 with you, and I remember like all these different performance majors playing all these like styles, and there would be like a kid playing like Meshuggah gent music, and it was like he like slayed it, and everyone was just like, oh whoa, you know. And then next thing you know, there was Ole, who was a singer-songwriter, and he played, and it was like he was like a singer-songwriter guy who like accompanied himself on guitar, but he like murdered that tune, and it was just like, wow, this guy's really good too. I don't know. So I think, yeah, I'll just bounce off that same feeling that like having that and like really allowing people to play genuinely, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Joe, that everybody feels that, you know, on that first day when the students come and they're all sitting in the hall and waiting for placement, and then you walk down the hall with a cup of coffee and they're like, oh man, there it is. Like all wrapped up, and you doing that and be like, hey, what's up? Is like that you have that persona that they recognize, that they associate with your style and your level, and that it's right there. It's like right there with them. Like there they are. in the guitar department with you, and I think
Yeah.
that's really cool.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It's nice to study with somebody that has a lot of life. I mean, I've made many records, done many tours, and all that kind of stuff. So it's great to pass on all different types of things. You know, whether it's touring or recording or you know, I've been in so many situations, done so many things. And I mean, that's like one thing I'll say in closing is that's one thing that's really killing me is the non-live playing thing, and not from like, oh well, of course, you know, I love to travel. Like some people don't like to travel. I love to travel. You know, I like to get on the plane. You know, I mean, I'm not as excited about it now since they cut alcohol sales, but but I mean, I like to fly and everything. You know, I don't mind it at all. But
You can bring your own.
yeah, I did that. Like the last time I flew was I had to do a photo shoot back in March with Alcatraz because we had these pictures that the record company's like, no, we can't use these. You know, you got. So I had to fly out to California. So yeah, I had it like very put together. I had like a little kit with like nips, and then I had little tiny bottles of Bloody Mary mix, and then I had a water bottle and everything. I was like, you know. I managed to work the system.
Always planning ahead in everything, in guitar and in life.
Yeah. What was but now I forgot what I was going to say. But oh, that's one of the things that's killing me is that because there's nothing better for your playing than playing live. You know, so it's the kind of thing where that's damaging the craft, as I would like. You know that's it's not like yeah, well the audience is great, traveling is great, playing shows, but there's no substitute for live performance as far as what it does for your playing. So that's like one of the most disappointing things for me. Not so much from the glitz and glamour of it, because you know anybody that's done a lot of touring, you have to do so many stinky things up when you tour. That's you know it's like one stinky thing after the other. The bigger the tour, the more stinky things you have to do, and the longer the tour, more stinky things you have to do. Like sometimes true tests of will and strength. But you know, yeah, I've got everyone. That's what I often say to people. It's like you know what that rock. Trust me, all that rock star stuff. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
I love it. Joe Stump, thank you for coming to Coffee Talk with
Oh,
us.
it's great. Thanks for having me.
And coffee cheers.
Yep.
And we'll see you all
Everybody.
next time on Coffee Talk. Bye, everybody.